Hi everybody, welcome to our webinar, AVID STEM Math and Science Summer Bridge, High Engagement Strategies that Strengthen Math and Science Skills. I'm your moderator, Kayla Burrow, AVID's Marketing and Communication Specialist, and I'm joined today by two of our curriculum project managers, the awesome Ben Solomon and the wonderful Kathy Arno. Now before we get started, I just want to do some housekeeping with you. We are recording today's broadcast, and a link to the recording along with this slide deck will be emailed to you later this week. All participants are in listen-only mode, but you can communicate with us in the chat box. Be sure to click the chat option in the top right-hand corner of your screen. We'll have at least 10 minutes at the end of today's webinar for Q&A, so submit those questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we'll do our best to answer those at the end. If there are some that we're not able to get to, we'll try to send answers to those along with the recording. All right, so now, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Ben.
Thanks so much, Kayla. Before we dive into the content here, we had some fun with the registrants and the Excel data report that we had from that and pulled this heat map of our participants from today. And so moving the green were the states that had the highest number of registrants for this webinar, and then moving through the orange and yellow and then down to the red. And it's pretty exciting and encouraging to see that the majority of the country is covered. We actually even had some international registrants for this, and we just pulled the U.S. heat map. But pretty neat to see the coverage, just the breadth that we have here with Summer Bridge. So we're excited to have you guys. We know we have some returning participants that have had Summer Bridge at their districts. We know we've got some brand new people that are just kind of exploring, and so hopefully everyone here will have your needs met over the next 45 minutes or so. So let's dive into the agenda of what we're going to be talking about. And so we're going to start off with the why of Summer Bridge, hopefully connect to some of the goals and objectives that your school or your district has for why you're joining us on this webinar today. Kathy's going to take us into a deeper dive into the overview of the math and science programs, which are comprise the curriculum and the content of what the Summer Bridge programs are, and then we will finally get down to the nuts and bolts in the last 15 or 20 minutes of what does it actually look like to implement Summer Bridge and bring it to your school and or district. So if you've been around in AVID circles long, you know that we like to frame our presentations in the form of an essential question. And I would also like to request that you get something to take notes with, digitally, analog, however you want to do that. But I'd love for you to write down this essential question, and then I'm going to give you a writing assignment here in a second to kind of get our brains moving in the right direction. So our essential question for our time here today is, how can the Summer Bridge programs be used at my school or district to benefit students? So write that essential question down, and then I'm going to give you about a minute to do a quick write just to kind of collect your thoughts and maybe respond in writing would be great to this essential question. Why are you taking an hour out of your day today to spend with us? What are the goals? What are the objectives that you hope to accomplish at your school or district? So at a minimum, think about that question, and even better would be to write down some responses to that, and then we'll keep rolling in about 45 seconds. So let's see if we can connect with some of the objectives that you have and why you're joining us here today. So this is not intended to be a comprehensive list of all the benefits of Summer Bridge, but this is a starter list to get you thinking about what are some of the benefits that other districts have already experienced as they brought in Summer Bridge. Well, obviously Summer Bridge is based on math and science, and so there's the potential for math acceleration. We have some schools and districts that are using the math portions of Summer Bridge to actually accelerate their students through the sequence of math classes there. For any students that are involved in any of the programs, their math skills will come up, and we have data to show the impact on that. For all of our students, if they're moving into more rigorous courses as we espouse in AVID, this is to provide them with additional instruction to set them up for success there. Some districts are using this purely for an enrichment perspective on math and science, and so that's kind of the content piece of that. But then we also wanted to point out who this potentially serves. And so there's a lot of potential for serving various student populations. We had some questions come in in people's registration for this webinar. So what about ELs? What about gifted students? What about fifth graders? And so we just want you to know that districts are using this in a lot of creative ways to meet a lot of different student populations. And Kathy's going to dive into more detail on that topic throughout the course of this webinar. And then lastly, again, if you've been in AVID circles for long, you know that everything we do is grounded in WICOR, writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. And the Summer Bridge curriculum is heavily based on WICOR strategies. And so a lot of districts, another side benefit that they've experienced is that we now bring more teachers into kind of the AVID instructional fold here of being exposed to the instructional strategies that we espouse in AVID. And so, again, not every benefit that we've seen schools meet, but, you know, maybe one or more of these benefits aligns with your answer to the essential question on the previous slide of why you are considering bringing Summer Bridge to your district. And so if that's the why of some of the benefits that Summer Bridge can bring to your district, let's look at the how. How are schools doing this? Again, not a comprehensive list, but maybe just some things to get your wheels turning a little bit about how Summer Bridge could help you meet your school or district's goals. So let me just let you read a couple of testimonies from our end of the year reports of some of our existing sites. About 1 minute to read through these quotes from our schools. So again, maybe on this slide, there are some things that resonate with you, that pique your interest, that align with your objectives. You know, you see early college high school is one utilization for it. You see a large urban, you see algebra readiness, you see fifth graders, you see ninth graders, you see GT, pre-AP, and so probably one or more of those things resonates with your why for this time today. And then again, if the previous slide was a why, and this is an example of some of the hows, then what are the results? What are the outcomes that we're seeing from the schools and districts that have implemented? So same thing, let me just give you a minute to read through these testimonials. So I love seeing these two quotes side by side. On the left, we have a 5-year returning district that just keeps coming back year after year and saying we are seeing the benefits with our students. We're going to keep re-upping to be a Summer Bridge member. And then on the right, we have a district that was just finished year 1, and they said, hey, we didn't really know exactly what we were going to see, but man, we saw some success. And I love on the left and the right, and both of those testimonials, which just come from districts. We have kind of an end of the year feedback form, and these are some of the quotes that they put on there, but I see the word success, and I love to see that because in AVID, that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to build the path to success for our students. And so when we have an opportunity like Summer Bridge to bring more and more students onto that pathway to success, it's just a great opportunity for us. And so that's kind of the high level why of why Summer Bridge exists and what it can accomplish in your district. And so I'm going to hand it off to Kathy Arno, who's going to dive us in a little bit deeper into an overview of what Summer Bridge is. Kathy, take it away.
I'm so happy to, no, thank you. I'm so happy that you have joined us to find out a little bit more about Summer Bridge. I thought before we really dive into the specific components of Summer Bridge and how you do it, how you make it happen in your district, I would talk to you just a little bit about how Summer Bridge came to be. And of course, this is AVID STEM Summer Bridge. When we were starting the development of this program, which came through a grant project, we really started from nothing. We just had the requirement of developing math and science materials for summer for middle school students to strengthen AVID support for math and science. And we piloted these programs for 3 years before we actually made the programs available nationwide. But as we drew our group of teachers together to work on summer bridge development, there were several things that we had in our mind that had to be in place. Number one, and you'll see this in the middle, and it says content. We knew that the math courses, of which there are 2, and the science courses, 2 science courses, had to be about rigorous content. They had to relate exactly to what is happening in the classrooms, or else it was not profitable for the districts or schools to offer summer bridge. So that was our number 1 criteria. What are the fundamental aspects of the content that need to be increased, need to be shored up? What elements do we need to put into place for the students to be successful for the following school year? What do we need to provide at this point that they can move into that next grade level to be successful? So the rigor and of the content became our number 1 criteria. The second one was it has to be taught with AVID's WICOR strategies. So in all 4 of the programs, you will see writing. The students write. They do a tremendous amount of inquiry through their investigations, be that math or science. And the programs will start with a great deal of collaboration. So there's very little direct teach that takes place in the program. And by having such a large degree of collaboration, this makes it a low-risk process for the students. But you'll see other words there that are also very important components of what we're doing. Students write reflections. All of the 4 programs have teams that work together. In Mission Possible, they are a group of investigative agents for the government. In ProPhone in the environment, they are companies that are looking to build a facility. In the 2 math programs, they are tribes that work together to get points. So it's all based on team and with a very gentle competition. We include levels of thinking, vocabulary development. So a little bit later, I'll refer to an appendix that's in the back of each one of the curriculum guides. And there we have either vocabulary cards, which have the definition. They have an illustration or a graphic of the word. And then we have vocabulary activities that are in the programs. The fundamentals, you will see they're listed right above content. We know that we had to have the mathematic or scientific fundamentals in place. And each of the programs, particularly the math, start out with just a few fundamental emphases so that the students do a little bit of review, a little bit of deepening before they move into the sequence of materials that are for the following year. We use interactive notebooks through all of the programs that are made available to the students. And of course, Cornell notes. We couldn't do AVID without Cornell notes or 2 or 3 column notes. And then you will also see that we relate to the standards. We have a correlation or alignment to the Common Core State Standards and actually to the Next Generation Science Standards on our website, and they're also in the book. Our third component, the first being content that's rigorous, second being WICOR, the third one is it has to be fun. If they're not fun, students are not going to come back to a summer program day after day. So you will see that embedded throughout with brain breaks and fun activities that are related to content, and sometimes they're just strictly fun. So that's an overview of how we got to where we are with it. So let's take a look at the 4 individual programs so that you'll see what actually takes place there. The 2 math programs, we titled them very straightforward, Math for 7th Grade and Algebra Readiness. Math for 7th grade, as you saw from a couple of those testimonials, don't have to be strictly for students rising to 7th grade. And algebra readiness doesn't have to be just for 8th graders or students going into 8th grade algebra. They're also used for students going into 9th grade algebra. The concepts are those that you see represented on the slides. And in each case, you will see that there are some things that will be fundamentals that might be a little bit of review, like for math for 7th grade, rational numbers, fractions, decimals, and percentages. As a longtime science teacher who also is a math person too, when I was teaching at the high school, I heard the teachers say so many times, if the students just had these fundamental arithmetic processes in place, like fractions and decimals and percentages, I can teach them the math. I can teach them algebra. So we spend a little bit of time deepening those understandings. Math for 7th grade, yes, they get into algebraic expressions and equations, multiple representations by graphs, by charts, by equations, coordinate graphing, ratio and proportion, and two-dimensional measurement. Then in algebra readiness, you'll see topics that are a step above, squares and square roots and Pythagorean theorem. And here they get into algebraic equations, multi-step algebraic equations, linear equations, slope and intercept, multiple representations of functions this time. And yes, we do some more coordinate graphing as it relates particularly to transformations. And now they move into three-dimensional measurement. So those are our two math programs that we have. Let's take a look at our two science programs. Mission Possible is a middle school science program. It's basically the 7th to 8th grade transition, although that's not strictly the only group that can get into that. What happens in Mission Possible is we have an interdisciplinary science program. We have components of biology, chemistry, physics. There are absolutely math concepts and graphing that take place in Mission Possible. And then there are components of environmental science. We built this around a theme. And here, the students virtually track this scientist around the world. Excuse me. He has developed this deadly microorganism that he's threatening to unleash on the world. So the students actually act as Interpol agents, and they have podcasts that send them to different areas of the world. They might go to India, they go to Antarctica, they go to Russia, they go to the rainforest, and each time they go to one of these places, they do investigations about that particular location, and they also learn about that location. All along the way, we are very highly interested that they do critical thinking and problem solving. This is science. It's related to inquiry. It's related to problem solving. Our specific concepts that we develop there are data collection and being able to analyze their data. They do laboratory investigations. It's not science unless they do investigations. They do graphing and analysis of graphs. They do mathematical concepts that are related to graphs, including linear equations. For Mission Possible, they do an extensive forensics unit. After the evil doctor has been identified, then they have got to prove that's him because they make a case then to the government. And at the end, they have a water bottle rocket launch as they launch those deadly microorganisms into space. So very much a fun prospect for the students. Excuse me. And then our next one is ProPhone in the environment. ProPhone, you will see on the slide, is an integrated math and science. Although Mission Possible had components of math in it, this one is a very deliberate integration of mathematical concepts. This program is used very successfully for the 8th to 9th grade transitions, and I have some schools that use it for the 9th to 10th grade transition. This is project-based or problem-based learning. So the entire theme of all of the units is to get to the point where the teams have determined the best location for the ProPhone company to build their facility. And along that line, they are going to be looking into the concepts that you see listed there. Experimental design, data analysis. They will dig into soil, pardon the pun on that, soil and water testing. They'll look at population growth and sampling, biomes, graphing, analysis, linear functions, because all of those pieces form an element of what they present to a panel of judges at the very end of the program to determine what facility, the location of the facility, and why they chose that facility. We designed ProPhone, back one, Ben, just a moment. We designed ProPhone to be team taught by an algebra and a biology or environmental science teacher, although we very successfully have had teachers that are competent in the algebra skills that also teaches biology and environmental. But there's enough math in there that you have to have someone competent with math as well as science. Okay, let's move ahead. I'm sure that you're wanting to know what kind of curriculum materials that we have available. And we have a curriculum guide for each program. Now, the guides are when I say comprehensive, they're like 300 to 400 pages each. And they have everything that the teacher will need. They have unit plans. They have every handout. They have the appendices that are represented there. They have step-by-step instructions for them to present the lessons. In the back of each one of the curriculum guides, there are sets of team builders and brain breaks. We build them into the programs, but there are often times when you will say, my students have been doing a lot of rigorous brain work and it's time for them to have a brain break. So there's a packet or segment of brain breaks in the back of the book that they can go to and pull those out. Again, part of that fun element of science or math. Also in the appendices are the supplies and handout lists. And by the way, the supply list is on the MyAVID website, and I'll refer to that again later, so that that's something that you could look at before you got into the program itself. Each of the programs either has vocabulary cards, which is true for the 2 math programs, or they have a list and a definition, which are for the 2 science programs. So there are vocabulary activities built in. And Summer Bridge resources on MyAVID, all the handouts will be available once you have purchased a program, and the interactive notebooks. The interactive notebooks are required for every student, but they can be purchased from AVID or you can print them locally. It depends upon if you have either the funds to print them locally or you have an in-house print shop for your programs. But every student does have to have an interactive notebook. Let's go to the next slide. This is an example of a unit plan. This particular one comes from Algebra Readiness, but all of them are put together in this fashion. They list the objectives that the students will complete. They list every activity and a rough amount of time that the students will spend on those. Every handout is listed. And by the way, we have a teacher module that's available on demand. And on those modules, all these handouts are linked so that they can be printed right from that. So if you purchase a program, you get access to that link. All resources and supplies are listed. And as you look at those, as you will see at this moment, that those supplies that are there are pretty much ordinary things. Nothing is exotic. Let's go to the next page of the unit plan. Teacher preparation. And again, this is a unit plan for the teacher. So it lists what the teacher needs to do ahead of time, the WICOR strategies that are used, and then you'll see there the ELL strategies that were deliberately used within the program. The alignment to Common Core State Standards are listed for this particular unit, and then the new vocabulary terms that the students will use. Okay, let's go ahead to the next one, Ben.
So Kathy, this is a good kind of halfway point possibly to pause for some Q&A. Just a reminder to participants, hopefully you have access to the chat feature. It might be in the top right of your WebEx panel. And that's a good place if you want to ask some questions as we move through the content of this presentation. We'll have some Q&A time at the end also, but we thought this might be a good kind of strategic halfway point for some questions. And so, Kathy, I'm just looking at some of the questions that were submitted before our session today that maybe we could spiral back to. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier that potentially some districts might use this to specifically meet the needs of EL students. So based on what we've looked at so far, how would you kind of utilize what we just looked at to specifically support English language learners?
These elements that are listed here in this particular unit plan, when you see the ELL strategies, you will recognize that those are strategies that are useful for all students, but for ELL students, it is particularly important because it's a scaffolding for them. So we have, again, the collaboration that's throughout, vocabulary building, guided note-taking. So sometimes note-taking is closed notes, so it's basically the students are adding to what's already there, but sometimes they're Cornell notes written totally. We use sentence frames quite frequently for reflections, and then word banks, of course, to help them write summaries, etc. And thanks, Ben, for the reminder about giving time.
Hey, I got you. Yeah, I got you. Hey, so we're not having any questions come in on chat. I'm hoping that feature is working for you guys, but we'll have, again, time at the end of the session today to do chat, and if we're not getting you on chat, we might open up the audio for some audio questions there also. Let's just do one more, Kathy, before we keep rolling on. Amanda, you gave me confidence that chat is actually working, so I appreciate that. Amanda asked, will there be some type of training for the teachers who will be using these materials with students? So, Kathy, why don't you answer that question, and then we'll keep rolling with the presentation. So, what type of training will teachers receive to use the materials?
We have a teacher training module for each of the 4 programs, and those will be available through AVID's learning management system. So after a district has purchased Summer Bridge, we will ask the district to give us a list of teachers that will be teaching and their contact information, and we will set up an AVID account for that teacher if they don't already have it, and give them access to that module. And the module will take the teachers through the 15 units that exist for each one of the programs and highlight those that might need some additional information or sometimes the challenges, but they will all be addressed by a teacher of Summer Bridge. So it won't be just slides, it will be actual audio of a teacher who's been through the program, taught the programs, to describe some of the challenges or things that work really, really well. And those trainings will take roughly about 2 hours to run through. It might take longer if the teacher is stopping to make notes in their curriculum guide as they go through there. So yes, there are trainings for the teachers.
All right, Kathy, well, let's keep rolling with the second half of the presentation, diving into the resources.
Okay, for our resources, let's take a look at where you can find these elements on MyAVID. On the MyAVID homepage, you will see there on the left side in the orange box that there is a link to Summer Bridge resources. And that link will take you to an overview page that will also give you a link to the file sharing. So you can get at the materials 2 ways, either through Summer Bridge resources or through file sharing, going there directly. And so let's go ahead and look at what we have on file sharing. When you pull up the file sharing, and you will see there on the left, it's MyAVID file sharing, and then under the Summer Bridge folder, there are 5 different folders there. And the first one is the program information. Here you will get overview documents, so you would find a flyer there, you would find an overview of the programs, a document that has a timeline for the Summer Bridge program, and the access to the application is there too. The application doesn't mean that we choose who we admit. It just means that we need this application in order to get the information from the district or the school about which programs you're purchasing, how many curriculum guides do you need, who do we send your contract to, who do we ship the materials to. So the application is really a source of information for us, but the access to it is found there under program information on file sharing. The next element is a curriculum sampler, and I do encourage all of you to take a look at that curriculum sampler, because the sampler has a table of contents for each of the 4 programs, so you can see all of the content pieces. You can see how many days or how many units are devoted to that particular concept. You can see the brain breaks that are inserted. You can see the reflections, all of those pieces. So we have a table of contents, and then there are 2 sample lessons from Math for 7th grade, 2 from Algebra Readiness, 2 from Mission Possible, and 2 from ProPhone in the environment. So they will give you a very good look at how we structure the program. In addition, in that sampler, at the very beginning, is the introductory material from one of the programs. The introductory material is much the same for all 4 programs, but yet they're not identical. So you can see there how we describe the use of the interactive notebooks, how we look at the Common Core practices or the next generation standard practices. Also under information, you can find an FAQ that will address more specific questions that districts tend to have about Summer Bridge. Also there is a link to some student level data from 2013. And that data there, at that point, we were collecting the data for the students that participated, the course they were in, and the grade average they had prior to summer bridge, and the course and the grade average they had after summer bridge. And then the districts took a look at what the grades were before and after. Did they accelerate from an on level to an advanced class, or did they stay on level, or did they stay at an advanced level? And then that data will show you the progress that the students made and their grade levels in an A band, an A or B band, and then a C band from there. So that's very informative. The reason that is from 2013 is, as this program has grown, it basically outpaced the capacity for some of the school districts to collect that data. They didn't have student information systems, so the student level data was very difficult to collect. So that's the latest data that we have. Also under file sharing, you see one that says program specific. So for each of those 4 programs, in there will be the documents that they can print for each of the handouts, certificates for the programs. It will also have the interactive notebook that corresponds to that particular program. So that one is what we call a hidden folder, because you can't access this one until you actually have purchased the program. But the program information is available to all. The standards alignment, you'll see down in the rightmost bottom box. We did do an alignment, the Common Core for the 2 maths and next generation standards for the 2 sciences. And I know that a lot of districts or some states don't align their math programs to Common Core. And that's quite all right, of course, but it still will give you a look at how we have aligned to those particular standards, whether you're using Common Core or not. So that's an informative piece for you. The supply lists are available on for Summer Bridge. And then you'll see one that I didn't link to, and that's called Sample District Forms. Several districts have shared their forms with us, information that they put out to students, or they put out to parents, or information that they gave to their schools. So those are just from different districts that you can access there.
So this is a really important slide that's kind of buried in the middle of this presentation. And so just to kind of make sure we sit on this slide and you have a visual for how to access all of this. There's only so much information that we can provide in 45 minutes or so here. And so we did want to go ahead and show you, for those of you that know how to log on to MyAVID, how you can get to all of that information that was just presented to you. So again, underneath file sharing, you can access it here, or underneath the community tab. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see Summer Bridge, and there are the 5 folders that Kathy just spoke about. Under Program Information, one of the third option here is this PDF with the actual application on it. And when you open that application, you'll get this, which has the link to the what we call a smart sheet in order to access that. And so when you click on that link, it will take you to this link right here. And just to kind of help you out, I'm going to go ahead and pop that link in a second into our chat. So if you want to just go directly to the application, you can do that. But we also wanted you just to see where all of this information that that Kathy just talked through is available to you on file sharing.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I see a couple questions in the chat about the cost of the programs. And no, I won't share that cost here, but it will be available to you, and we'll give you a link to how we can get to that. And the other part of that question is it a one-time purchase or annual? It is an annual participation fee, just as the AVID agreement is an annual fee. How long are the programs? I'll get to that in just a second here. So let's go ahead, Ben, and move one slide forward. In fact, it's right here. Yeah, so for some specifics, each one of the units has, each one of the programs has 15 units, and they are structured to comprise a 4-hour segment. Many districts offer summer programs in 3 weeks, and that's why we structured ours this way. So it would be basically 4 hours for 5 mornings a week for 3 weeks. Although I will say there are some districts that offer it 6 hours a day. They put some intermediate activities in place, so it's not just math the whole time. And it's very likely that you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if my students would stay engaged in math for 4 hours or engaged in their science. That is truly not a complaint that we ever get about the program, because we've made it so highly engaging and so very collaborative that the students don't really have time to be bored, and they're not sitting there taking notes. But many districts do have to offer a summer program that's a little bit shorter. They may have 10 days or 12 days. And in a case like that, then the district has got to make the decision about, as they look at the curriculum, are there elements of this that I know my students already understand? I could leave this off. Or maybe I don't include one of the particular activities. So that's always adjustable. An AVID district can purchase Summer Bridge, and any student in the district can attend. Even if every school in that district is not an AVID school, this is a district-wide fee. So a district would pay a certain fee in order to have, let's say, math for 7th grade. And then every school could offer math for 7th grade. All students could attend. So it's a district-wide fee, which is different than the regular AVID implementation. We do have to have that application, which I described a little bit earlier, for its information. This is a separate quote or contract. So it's not tied to your regular AVID implementation or membership contract. So once you submit that application, then we prepare a quote and send that out to whomever you designated to receive that. And then that quote is signed and returned to us along with a purchase order. And then that sets all the other pieces in motion for the training module and for the shipping, etc. I mentioned the online teacher training just a moment ago, so I won't go back through that. For the 2 math programs, we highly recommend that there be an end-of-bridge exam for the students. We don't provide that. That's not a possibility for us in AVID. We're not psychometricians. We could not possibly develop an end-of-bridge program that every district would say, that is helping me determine what the placement for my students is for next year. But we do recommend that that be done the last 2 days of the program. Excuse me. So looking at what you have in your district to really think about, we mentioned the school application. And notice that it says, submit no later than 6 weeks prior to implementation. The reason for that is, as we just mentioned just a little bit ago, you submit an application, then we prepare a quote, send that out to you, then it has to be signed. And that step in the process where it's in the district and is awaiting signature, we find that that frequently takes a long time within the district. So that's why we say we need 6 weeks to continue this process. So application, quote, signature within the district, and a purchase order. When those come back to us, then we will give access to the training modules, and we will set up shipment. And here is another snag point too, because once that shipment goes out to whomever you designated to receive the shipment, then that shipment has got to go to the teachers in time for them to have it for their training module. So there are a number of steps to go through as you think about this. That's why 6 weeks is just a minimum prior to your implementation. I mentioned the district-wide participation fee, again, which is very, very different. And another little note on that, if you take or offer Summer Bridge a second year, your participation fee is cut in half. So then there's quite a cost savings on that for the second or subsequent school year. Another thing for you to consider is the teacher participation in the modules. I really can't emphasize this enough, that this program is taught very differently than the way a regular classroom is taught. Again, it's that collaboration. It is the fun aspect. It is the way that the entire program is put together. So teachers need to take a strong look at how to operate throughout that entire program. So please don't let them mistake getting into those training modules. Some districts get their teachers together, like all of their algebra readiness teachers, put them into one room and work through that training module all together. Many others just say you can do that on your own. Something else that districts sometimes do, and I do recommend, is allow time for your teachers to look at the modules, to view the modules, make notes in their curriculum guide, and give them time to prepare print materials that they need. There's sometimes charts that they need to prepare, or cards that they need, because we do card games sometimes with them on math or science. So think about that as an extra time. Many districts give another day beyond the summer bridge program for the teacher to do that work. The institutional cost depends upon how you set it up, of course. And do you provide transportation? Is it all at one, they all go to one school? Is it collected at various schools? Meals. Sometimes districts offer breakfast and or lunch for the students. The designation of a summer bridge support person, that's on the application, but that person is really important to us because that's the person that we contact with any kind of questions that we have about summer bridge, so they become very important. At the end of the program, we ask you to give us 2 bits of data. One of them is tell us how many students you had in each of the programs and how many schools participated. So it's not looking at student level data, although we definitely would recommend that you do that. I'm looking over at some of the questions. Could Mission Possible be used as a 9 or 8 week acceleration course during the school year? The answer is yes. And in fact, this year, there are 2 school districts that are using the programs, or some of the programs, after the state testing takes place in April or early May. So they're doing it in the students' regular classes. So yes, it certainly could be used in that way. Another question was, are teachers getting paid? That is a district responsibility. Yes, the teachers be paid for this just like they would be paid for summer school, but that all takes place within the district. Okay, just a minute. I've got a question here that I don't quite understand. Are we selecting math or science, or is it the science part of it? You can select any of those 4 programs that you want. You can select one of the 2 maths or the 2 sciences, or you can select 2 or 3 or all 4 of them. So that's absolutely a district decision on that. Okay, so let's look at how we make this happen. So in the early spring, which we're in there right now, if you think that this is something that you want to offer, you need to be talking to your school administrators, because it could be their students that accelerate. Or you're going to be offering this at their school. Administrators got to be kept in the loop. I recommend that you involve your math and science coordinators, your directors for your content, so that they know exactly what's going to be offered in these programs. They can give their recommendations. They can help develop the student profile and identify the students. Are you going to use it for students who just need a little more boost for the next year? Do you want to think about accelerating some on-level students to an advanced class? If so, you would need to select those that are already high-performing in their current on-level classes. So think about that. What is this target group of students that you want? I've had different districts that have also used these programs strictly for student groups like their migrant students. So again, think about what it is that you want to use as your criteria for your students.
Kathy, I'm looking at this slide and remembering, what we did when we implemented AVID in our district, and it seems like this is a fairly analogous process to selecting the profile, selecting the best teachers, figuring out what do we want to accomplish by bringing in AVID. Similar thought process related to Summer Bridge.
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. Good point. It sort of goes without saying to select your best teachers. And I have had the question before, is if we're going to offer algebra readiness, do I need a math teacher to teach it? And the answer is an absolute yes, because really, if you don't have a good teacher for your program, then I would ask, what is the value of offering the program? Because you want to get the best value for your students and the best value for your district. So choose those energetic teachers that are strong in their content. So thinking about this, you're going to be selecting with administrators, with content teachers, and your math and science teachers. Get as much input as you can. Then March and April, let parents know. Once you've decided what student population you want to target, send information out to parents. Send it to your teachers so that they know that these are the possibilities and that they can recommend students to you. So let your parents know, recruit the students. The sample that's over there on the right was just one that a school district shared with me about something that they send out to their students and their parents. So let them know. That another thing they let them know is that this is, they called it an enrichment program, because it's come to me several times from teachers or from schools that the students were reluctant to come to a summer program because their perception is that students that go to summer school are those that are in trouble academically. And this is not the case here. So that's a distinction that you need to make. And this district just happened to make this a real fun kind of flyer. But you do need to...
Kathy, just to tease one thing out, and you've mentioned this and alluded to this, but just to make sure we're crystal clear, the students that participate in Summer Bridge do not have to also be in the AVID elective class, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be any student. Mm-hmm.
And just as you look at how schools choose the students that are in AVID, do they tend to have a decent amount of AVID elective students that are in the program, or is that not really typically considered as part of the student profile for Summer Bridge?
That is entirely up to the district. I know that there are some districts that use this as an AVID summer program, but most of them use it across schools so that AVID students attend as well as other students. So that, again, a district decision on that. Okay. Before you ever get to Summer Bridge, you need, when we'll ask you for this, that we will get a list of the teachers that are going to be teaching the program, and then we give them access to the modules. They should review the modules. The program supplies are listed there on the MyAVID site, so you can see that list. And by the way, those are, for the most of the time, they are things that you can buy at the dollar store, Office Depot, the grocery store, those kinds of things. We tried to make them simple. But for the two sciences, I will admit some of those are items that are specific to a lab. So think about that. Over on the right, you will see an example of a letter that a district sent out to the parents after the students were enrolled, just with more information. Information. It's good before the students enroll, at the very end, so that the parents are kept abreast of what's going on. So I think that was our last big slide. So I think now maybe we can look at some questions. Kayla?
Yeah, and also we want to make sure that we know typically at this point is when some people start clicking off. We had 70 or so people that participated with us today, and we want to thank you guys for your time and for your willingness to advocate for your students, especially in this area of math and science. And so this is kind of our stock email address here that you can continue to communicate to us through. But you see that, you saw on that previous slide, March and April is kind of that target time to get rolling, which is exactly where we are right now. So perfect time to be listening to this presentation and perfect time to be thinking about this. And so we are continuously available to you as you have questions and considering bringing Summer Bridge to your district. But we're also available for another 10 or so minutes right now. So on the chat, feel free to ask questions. And Kayla, do we have any questions that are already prepared at this point?
Yeah, here's one, and I'm not sure if you guys answered it already, but I think it bears repeating. Is the Summer Bridge program available to non-AVID schools within AVID districts?
The answer is yes on that. We just have to have verification that it is an AVID district. Yes.
So, Kathy, there's a question that was sent in before that just talked about a school or a district that's really going hard into STEAM. And so, and I think it's pretty obvious from this, but do you have any additional information on like STEAM initiatives and how they are supported through Summer Bridge?
The STEAM initiatives really add one more component, of course, to STEM, and that is looking at art. One way that we do that without being a targeted component, but yet just a natural component of the way we do interactive notebooks, is that students quite frequently are asked to process their learning in some kind of artistic fashion. And we call these processing activities or processing assignments, so that after they have participated in a particular amount of content, they may be writing poems, they may be drawing graphics, they may be doing acrostics, they might be designing a t-shirt, those kinds of things. So those are built into each one of the programs. So it's a little bit of an indirect relationship to the arts.
Well, hopefully you were able to get some feedback and some thoughts, especially again related to that essential question that we looked at earlier. Hopefully that idea of how can the Summer Bridge programs be used in my school or district to benefit students. Hopefully you have a deeper understanding about that. But again, as you continue to process that conversation in your district, reach out to us at summerbridge@avid.org. And then also here are our personal email addresses. If you have a reason to reach out to one of us individually, we're also here to answer questions. And so I think we have covered all of the questions that we've had come in on the chat at this point. And so we're going to go ahead and sign off. But again, this is not in the conversation. This isn't goodbye. This is see you later, because hopefully we'll be hearing from lots of you guys via that application link that we put in the chat and or via that summerbridge@avid.org email address. So we can't tell you guys how much we appreciate you and appreciate what you guys are doing for the students in your district every day. And this is just one more example of how through AVID, through your work, through your diligence and advocacy for your students, we can continue to prepare students for success in college readiness all across our district. So appreciate you guys, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Kayla, let's stop the recording. Call it a day.
Thanks, everyone. We'll have the recording out to you later this week along with some helpful links. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Goodbye.